would you choose to create like a positive life even when it's dark? Do we have that capacity? When I make music, it is scientific, it's spiritual, it's anthropological. We've talked about culture, we've talked about spirituality. My dad is a great listener. Couldn't really sing that well until later on in life. Now he's got a little bit of pitch.
Hey everybody, it's Muchi Alfonso right here. Just about to get into an interview with Nashon Holloway, and you don't want to miss that one because this one is just out of this world. So here's what you gotta do. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Make sure you don't miss any shows right here on Indie Soul Rhythms. Everybody, you're tuned into Indie Soul Rhythms, where soul meets rhythm and stories meet sound. Today I'm honored to welcome an artist whose name literally means oracle, and if you've ever heard her sing, you will understand why. From Michigan roots to international stage, from the church choir to collaborations with legends like Funk Brothers, Narada, Michael Walden, she's an artist born to bring healing through music. Welcome to Indie Soul Rhythms.
For that introduction.
You're most welcome. So we're going to dive right into our conversation, and we'll go right to the beginning. Your name, which means oracle, how has that deeper meaning guided the way you express yourself through music?
My name. Well, first I want to say that I don't know how to fix my Zoom, so that's why this background's here.
That's
It's kind of it's temporarily stuck. Otherwise, you'd see some of my artwork behind me. But this is cool though. So back to your question.
fine.
I just have to say it. So back to your question. My name. So let's see if I can give you the short version. I've only recently started sharing this openly. I've kept it to myself. But before I was born, my mom had a dream that she was going to have a fourth child. I have three older siblings, and there's kind of a gap between me and the youngest older sibling I have, about 6 years. And so she says that God told her that she was going to have a child, and that that child's name would be Nashon. Nashon is actually like a Hebrew boy's name. And it's so interesting because it's in the Bible, but the famous stories about him are actually told from rabbi to rabbi in oral traditions called the Hebrew Midrash. I'm not Jewish. I don't even know what I am spiritually right now because there's a lot going on. But this name has carried me forward in my will to make sound, to make music. Um, and so, as far as how my name impacts how I show up, I feel a very deep connection to the voice, to voicing that which is true, to voicing that which can help people remember something that strengthens our identity as human beings. And I also do believe that there's something keeping all of our hearts beating. So if we can focus on that sort of sovereign energy together, find some overlaps and harmonize, I think we'll have a greater existence here. We'll feel more connected to the patterns of life, which involve taking something that was left behind, building something in this life, and then leave and then passing it on to somebody else. So I utilize music as a vehicle, one of the vehicles, for hopefully spreading a message. And the cool story of Nashon, I'll tell you just a little bit. The one that's told outside of the Bible is that when Moses and all of the Israelites got to the Red Sea and they had like this tyrant of a Pharaoh, they were all really upset and saying, Moses, why did you bring us here? And Moses is praying, and Nashon, who's a leader of the tribe of Judah, they happen to be musicians, um, he just starts walking into the water and he's singing that whole time. And he sings until the water comes up to his knees and his stomach and his neck, and then he's singing and the water's going in his mouth, and he's actually singing "Who is like you, God." And once the water gets to his mouth, that's when the story says, whether you regard it as myth or whatever, Moses puts the staff in the water, and the sea of reeds parts, and people are able to get to freedom. So whether or not you see that as reality or something that's supposed to help us in reality, that's what I want to be a part of, liberating a lot of people from whatever makes them feel devalued.
That's very powerful. Because as you were speaking, all I could just see is the state the world is in today, all the nonsense that's going on around the world. So yeah,
Truly.
that's very timely.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
and the coolest part about the name, I should
yeah.
say, obviously I'm a nerd and there's tons that I could tell you about, tons of, yeah, but is anybody can be a Nashon. And it just means to be an initiator of that good thing.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really powerful. I hope people listening, somebody out there will be inspired by that. Your sound has been described as crisp and colorful. What emotions or imagery do you hope that these colors will evoke for your listeners?
Um, I think when that was said, that was NPR,
Yes.
and and it was when I was opening for Tank and the Bangas, and so I auditioned for a Tiny Desk contest back before it blew up, which was actually after Tank and them won. Um, and so I was opening for them because NPR said, "Oh, you're somebody in Chicago. We want during their Chicago stop to open for them." And they described me as crisp and colorful, and I think they also described me as forceful.
Mm,
And I don't really consider myself to be that forceful. Um, but I hope that the strength of what I see as beauty and truth comes through in whatever I'm singing, even if it's kind of, yin and yang, there's light and there's dark. And I want to focus on balancing those things in the sounds that I make. And also just make sure it honors, again, those traditions that I've been raised in. You mentioned Narada Michael Walden, who wrote for Whitney Houston
yeah.
and Aretha Franklin and Mariah Carey, and my mentors who wrote, Paul Reiser wrote Ain't No Mountain High Enough. He orchestrated Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and he gives me pointers and tips on what I'm writing and why I write those things. So I guess in sort of a roundabout way, I want my music to just inspire people, I guess, back to that good spark. Um, and I think that's the end of my answer. Yeah, the Tank and the Bangers,
Yeah.
Tiny Desk, the story,
Yeah.
um, and ultimately just, I mean, at that time I was singing about police brutality, and I actually stopped singing that song for a time because a lot of people were not hiring me. And they'd say, "Oh, we just don't think it's a good fit." And then the George Floyd protest happened, and then people really want you to be on there, and it's like you don't even care. Like so, and when I was talking, when I wrote songs about these things, so maybe that's why somebody deemed it as forceful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you actually don't see yourself as forceful, but just
Maybe
listening
it's a good
to
thing.
you, just listening to you, you come across as somebody who's forceful. I mean, that your music, uh, I think the minute you start seeing some pushbacks because of your message, you know that you've got a powerful message.
Okay.
So yeah, you may not see yourself as forceful, but I can see it.
Okay. I
Yeah.
hope that's a good thing because usually when the word, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't mean forceful as in it doesn't have negative connotations. It's force, you are a force to be reckoned with, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I hope so.
So growing up in Michigan, surrounded by music and faith, what are some of your early memories that shaped your love for music?
Hmm. Oh yeah. So my mom had a recording contract with Columbia Records that she walked away from. And so she was singing around the house all the time. My dad is a great listener. He couldn't really sing that well until later on in life. Now he's got a little bit of pitch. um, and so I grew up going to church multiple times a week. I realize now people don't do that. They don't, not only because of the religiosity of it all, and there's a lot of people who are not welcome, including, people like me sometimes. Um, and that, I want to be careful how I say that, but there's a lot of people who feel strange in that environment. And I grew up with a lot of joy. I grew up with a lot of music, and there's a lot of people now who don't have access to music making in churches because um, they don't go. And they also have never had any sort of institution facilitate them singing or making music with others. So a lot of people, a lot of my students wish that they had could harmonize with somebody, but they don't have a friend to do it with. And I said, oh, I didn't realize that this is kind of something that is of old that isn't being passed on. Wow, what can I do? So I don't know, but some of my earliest memories were my mom singing in the house. She would be singing Daryl Coley. My dad would put on Bob Marley, like Exodus, and he'd be like in the garden, and we'd be shucking corn together and snapping peas together, and you know, enjoying cucumber and watermelon. And that informs a lot of how I try to show up. All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Bob Marley Exodus. It's actually the current album I'm listening to because I'll just
Wow.
sorry I go through these periods where I don't know if you can see it. Uh, there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I go this
Yep.
through these periods where I go through artists and I listen to the music. I'm trying to understand their message. And so that's the reason why I said you're a force to be reckoned with, because
Mm,
at the moment I'm just immersing myself in Bob Marley music and his legacy and that kind of thing. He was a force to be reckoned with because of the
absolutely.
message, which obviously didn't sit well with a lot of people, but nonetheless, he was a force to be reckoned with.
That's right. I sing his songs all the time.
Yeah.
And I think of my dad, you know, I sing Redemption Song or I don't sing Exodus, but I sing Wait in Vain a lot. Yeah, I was raised on that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you did mention some of your mentors, including Narada Michael Walden. What lessons or experiences would you say you took from, your or do they still echo in your creative process? Any lessons you learned from your mentors?
Yeah. So many. Um, Musically, I had a time when I was working with Narada, Michael Walden, and I said that I didn't, it took me a lot of courage, but we'd written a song together and I felt like it sounded like someone else. And it wasn't bad because that somebody else was Whitney Houston. And I was like, that's really cool. But
Wow.
I don't know exactly why I'm singing this. And so we pushed, you know, pause on trying to figure out how to release it. And when I said to him how I felt about it, he said, "You're a genius." And that meant the world to me because I was scared because he's this successful, you know, person who built a lot of what we admire about the industry today, even though it's drastically different from when he was in his like prime, even though he's still going strong in some ways. Um, it's hard to tell a pioneer like, hey, I think I have to take the road less traveled. And the fact that I had someone who said, well, I'll be here. Um, and I think you're a genius for knowing how you want to sound. And then when I send him something that I've written independently, he'll have little perks or some little tips or things to add to it. Um, Not necessarily collaboration, but just encouragement. That's the biggest thing I've gotten from mentorship, aside from learning how to negotiate, which I'm still working on, of course. But yeah, you realize that you need to voice your value in the right ways
Yeah.
so that you can protect yourself. And that's another thing I've learned from some mentors. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, just looking at your first album, The Palace and the Heart, it was such a bold debut. How do you feel you've evolved musically and spiritually since then?
Wow. Musically, I have a deal more skill uh, as a guitarist. I started playing guitar as an adult, and I've come a long way. I can now, you know, take solos, and it's my primary instrument that I utilize to write typically. And since that time, The Palace in the Hut was inspired by a Khalil Gibran poem about individuals working in a field in a vineyard. and their sweat and their tears working in the vineyard actually is what watered the plants that where they picked the grapes and crushed them and made wine for these very wealthy people who had this party. And according to the author of the poem or the short story, the party was kind of weird and they didn't really sleep very well. And then the people who were working extremely hard to even be the source of these people's fun, um, they went home and they had less, but they had more in some ways. And their homes were warm. And uh, there's just this firelight that I distinctly remember. And so that's what I named the poem or the album after, because I had been to Dubai. I had been also playing a local tavern that doesn't pay anything where people literally will spit on you. And so I've been to the hut, I've been to the palace. I don't have a preference. I just understand that it's going to take you in both places. And so I would say I keep going through those seasons in life. And so that's more of a spiritual aspect of how I've grown since then. And musically, I understand so much more about how to deliver a song. Um, I understand why I wrote what I wrote then, and it was still very good. But now I care so much more about where I'm from, and I care about archiving that. I care about, you know, Motown. People have their critiques about why Motown was set up the way it is. Okay. And if you have had people who have taught you things, what can you, as your inheritance, bring forward and pass on? Because otherwise it will get left behind. And um, so when I make music now, I'm really thinking about carrying a torch as if it's my inheritance. Um, so that's also a spiritual answer, but it's a musical one because I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is equidistant between Chicago and Detroit. So for church, we would go to these conferences, and we had family in these two different cities because my grandmother came from the Great Migration to escape the Jim Crow South. Some of her siblings stopped in Chicago, some Kalamazoo, and some in Detroit. We were the ones in the middle, and I carry that story with me when I sing. It gives me a great deal of confidence. And I feel like that's why people before me used to sing. They didn't sing just for an industry. So that's another thing that I really am carefully adding to why I show up the way I show up and what I teach when I mentor students, as I'm a mentor now.
Wow. Yeah. That takes us very nicely into your era. Let's talk about the new single, In a Hurry. What inspired it?
Oh,
Emotionally, spiritually, or even rhythmically?
um, emotionally, I think I was dating someone at the time, and I probably wanted to be closer. I think this was a gentleman that I wanted to marry, and we just weren't going to get married. And it happens. It can be really devastating, but in our case, it kind of was like, oh, I guess you'll go that way and I'll go this way. And part of what I wound up writing was in a hurry. Will you reach out for me when things change? And basically, I'm asking, do you have the capacity to spend life with me? Do I have the capacity to spend life with you when things change, when things fade, when it's cold outside? Because I had this concept of, people when you're young and all the rom-coms are out telling you to look for butterflies and certain feelings. And I was like, well, what if you meet somebody during a crazy time in humanity, or you meet someone during a tough time in their lives? Would you recognize love and would you reach out for it? What if you've been with one person for a while? Would you keep reaching out for that same person? Is the question I was asking. And rhythmically, I was inspired by Stevie Wonder. And I was very much, as I still am, just so deeply moved by the album, Songs in the Key of Life. That's literally the best title for an album. It's he's probably one of my favorite, if not, if I had to pick a favorite, he'd probably be the person I forced myself to pick. So I was listening to his song Summer Soft.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned about, relationships. I think in today's world, we've come to a place where people have got tick boxes, when they're going into relationships, that you have to tick certain boxes before, you go out or you date someone. And I think that that's probably one of the worst thing that has happened to humanity, and people are not looking for the right person. They're just looking for somebody who can tick certain boxes. That, are they tall, 6 foot? Are they square faced? And the things that we see in rom-coms and stuff like that. And that's
Uh,
that's what people are modeling relationships after. And I
yeah.
think this song is so powerful that, from what you've just said in terms of what inspired it, I think the message is actually quite it's really powerful. And I felt that it carries balance of reflection and empowerment. But
Mm.
from your perspective, what message did you want to leave with listeners?
For the song,
Yes.
this one? Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, you said something really good just then about the dating world, and not to take us too far left, but I agree. I don't think people know why they need relationships anymore. We have all this focus on, productivity or
Yeah.
image or money, and it's very much that's why I was talking about sovereignty earlier. There are things that will always be here, and if you're not in touch with them, you may not be in touch with that which will always sustain you. So you're not looking for a person who can be with you on that level, that despite those different things that change, as we've been talking about, the palace and the hut and in a hurry, you're not really aware of who to even be looking for. You might be looking for a feeling, which is just as fleeting. You might be looking for a look, which is just as fleeting. People typically they start to look different as they get older.
Yeah, we grow up.
Um, and you might miss somebody wonderful because you haven't healed enough to even be open to love, because it's coming from a place of what can I get rather than this is what I tell my friends, and I'm extremely single. So it's coming from somebody that a lot of people don't want to listen to anyway. But I ask my friends a lot, um, who really, really want to get married, especially my male friends, like, and I don't usually get an answer. It just sparks a when you think about marriage, which some people do want to get married, some people don't. Are you wanting to say the vows, or are you wanting the vows to be said to you? Because the thing that I think you can control is you being ready to be committed, and you trust that they have been and are and will be, too. But a lot of people are showing up really expecting somebody to be like this
Yeah.
device. And you mentioned boxes that people are ticking, and I just really want, I guess it's a leading question that I ask, like, are you ready for that? Because it's an art form. I don't want you to see it as just work. People always say it's work, and it is. But what it involves is your heart truly engaged, not what you would like to compensate for an identity or to overwhelm shame. You can't use a person in that way. You are partnering with a person to create life, and I feel like that is what the song is about. Would you choose to create like a positive life even when it's dark? Do we have that capacity together? Might be the question.
Yeah. And you've said your upcoming album is sensual, is a sensual, rhythmic, soulful journey into the layers of love. Um, what do those layers mean for you personally?
Mind, body, and spirit. So when I make music, it is scientific, it's spiritual, it's anthropological. We've talked about culture, we've talked about spirituality. I haven't shared with you that I'm a certified sound healing artist, so I like to study and measure frequency. A lot of people believe in more esoteric aspects of what music can do physiologically for a person, like physically. But I think there's a scientific way to approach it, and then there's just the performance aspect and the commercial aspect and the industry aspect. Um, so that's probably what you're asking. Um, and when I say soulful and rhythmic and sensual, I really am trying to embody that aspect of myself that would cause me to make a music from an aligned place, and hopefully impart that sort of aligned inspiration in people, um, to operate from that loving place, that spark of goodness.
When is the album due to come out?
Springtime. I don't have an official date just yet, but it'll be in the late spring.
And I take it the theme of the album is really around love and relationships? Or
Love, relationships. I've got a song called Go Off that's about the world, um, and things that are going on now. And the words to the bridge of that song are some of my favorite, which is, "We're living in hell if we never make loving the law." I have songs dedicated to my father, who has multiple sclerosis, um, and kind of my mother too. It's called "Gonna Be All Right." That's more of a gospel quartet song,
right.
and it's about how it's okay to share when you're going through something. I need help doing that too, but um, in particular, my dad was having something called trigeminal neuralgia, and that's where a nerve is firing off in your face, and it feels like it's burning all the way through here, and it's like shocks for certain minutes. And they call it, I hope this isn't bad for your viewers, but they call it the suicide disease because it's arguably, people say, the most painful thing you can endure. And I've witnessed him endure that. So I wrote that song for him. I've written love songs that are like In a Hurry. I've written other love songs like The Middle, which is about kind of this unrequited, you probably don't love me, but come over anyway kind of song. um, so yeah, it's kind of just about all different types of relationships. And um, yeah, I suppose that's what it is.
Yeah. Thank you for your candor and for being so open. Now let's look at your purpose and legacy. As Vice Chair of Arts and Ancestry at the Institute of Public Scholarship, how do you see your work bridging art, culture, and healing?
Great question. I forgot to change my website, so you guys probably got it from there. I no longer work at the Institute of Public Scholarship, though they did sponsor some of my sound healing certifications.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was a great time where I was supposed to be helping with people doing their genealogical research, particularly Black and Brown people who have often been severed from their people's traditions and
Yeah.
all that. So you can learn more about where you're coming from, and then we would create something so you can archive it. And that was my method for people to really deal with erasure, because there's a lot of that happens. And so um, I hope people create more, and I hope that when people engage with my music, they think about archiving. They see themselves as archivists. Um, and so now I'm actually working at Guitars Over Guns. It is a place where I mentor high schoolers who, um, in some cases, they've been through a lot. At the high school where I currently work, I believe, is present. I just got an email as soon as we got on, or a text that says we're going to go through ICE training. Um, and I have students who are texting us saying, "Hey, can I walk by myself after class? I don't know, because I don't, my parents can't come get me yet. And they're very scared, but we utilize music as a means to send a message um, in a way that's positive and as therapy. And again, I've talked about the mind, body, and spirit, but we can use it to learn about science. We can use it to learn about our bodies. If we're singing, your body is the instrument. We can use it to learn about cultures, because one of the things I teach with different scales that we can learn is that every scale comes from a people group. So if it's the blues scale or the pentatonic scale, it's also known as the pygmy scale. The pygmy people come from the Congo in West Africa, where your iPhone is dug up and all that. Um, and so each scale from modes, it's all about people. And so I think I would love for artists to consider their value independent of somebody else ascribing it, if that's the right way to say it. And that's what I teach at Guitars Over Guns, on top of all this other stuff that's swirling around in my head and all this type stuff. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and we have a great time. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Um, and I think I mentioned it earlier that, the world is in such a state. So what role do you believe soulful music still plays in helping us slow down and reconnect?
What role do I believe soulful music?
Yeah.
has in helping us to slow down and reconnect.
Yeah.
It's on the tip of my tongue because I have about three different things I could say. Um, you know, I played at Andy's Jazz Club this past weekend, and they asked for that room here in Chicago to be a quiet room. And while we're playing, people are eating and just flat out listening. Um, I've heard different Buddhist monks, whether it's Zen Buddhism or other types, talk about listening, talk about the practice of doing one thing at a time, and how we've fragmented our attention span so much, not just with the phone, not just with the jobs, not just with some people who have multiple children, which God bless y'all. I don't know how you do it all because that's the most amazing, that's the most creative thing I can think of is having kids and raising them. Um, and so when I think about that room, though, people engage with me much more after the show because they were listening. They grasped something that a lot of other people who just came there to drink don't. And I think if I'm singing from my soul, which is my primary technique, though I have performance background, sound healing, blah, blah, blah. If it's coming from the heart, they say, it reaches the heart. And I am a testament to that. And I believe that's how my soulful music, I hope, leaves an impact. But I think different voices and different types of music do different things. So how can deep listening facilitate that calm, I think is what you were saying. It really is an invitation into slowing down every time somebody's speaking to you, every time music is on. It's an invitation for you to do one thing. Um, and that one thing may inspire you to process something differently or encourage somebody else because your cup has been filled a little bit more.
True. True. Yeah, I just got a quick fire round, a few questions just before we ask you to introduce your brand new single. And we just require a one-word answer, or you can elaborate if you wish to. So first question is a song that never fails to lift your spirit.
Minnie Riperton. There's a song called Le Fleur, and there's a song called Expecting. So that's two, sorry. Um,
Fine.
yeah, but those I listen to all the time.
One artist, past or present, you'd love to jam with.
Prince.
Prince.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Coffee or
Yeah.
tea when you are creating.
I should drink tea because it gets me emotionally settled, but I drink coffee and then I'm like, yeah.
And what are your pre-show rituals before you hit the stage?
You know what? Oh, where is that thing? I actually I recently got this is a non-spawn, but I recently got a flute from I Am Sound, and I have a wooden one coming. This is 3D printed, and I actually play this on show days now because it helps me not only to warm up so that I'm able to properly uh, utilize breath support as a singer. This really helps with that. Um, it's also just calming. You know, if I were to be feeling nerves, say I have a client who is not paying me enough and I'm not nervous about the performance, but I'm nervous about the dynamics behind whether or not I'm going to be able to survive. Because that's what it becomes. It used to be, do I sound good? Now it's, am I going to pay rent?
Yeah.
But this helps. And it is, um, yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
Amazing. And if your life right now had a soundtrack, what would the title be?
If it had a soundtrack, what would the title be of the
Yeah.
soundtrack?
Yeah.
Gonna be all right. Gotta be. And if it's not, I did not do my part.
Well, Nashon, it's been a joy having you uh,
Okay.
on Indie Soul Rhythms. Thank you for sharing your story, your energy, and your light. Now, for Indie Soul Rhythm listeners, you're about to experience, magic for yourself. So I'm just going to ask Nashon before she leaves us if she can do us the honor of introducing her brand new single, In a Hurry.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Muchi. I appreciate you letting me just ramble on and on and on and go all the way to the outs of the universe and into my family line and into Chicago and everywhere in a short amount of time. I appreciate that. So yeah, my song In a Hurry is it is soul. It finally sounds like a lot of where I've been, and I hope that it takes you where you want to go. Because this is just about love and nothing else. So hopefully you get a big yes out of it when you hear it on the inside.
Thank you.
Thank you.